Have you ever heard of an alternative approval process? And he said, no. This is a man who's been in business
If
for...
I know what the project is and I get a choice, then I'll make my choice.
And also they were developing surveillance and data collection so that they could keep tabs on the citizens of Nanaimo.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kellan Howard podcast. I'm here with Sandy and Noni Bartlett. Sandy is a practicing lawyer of 38 years, and Noni is a businesswoman, and she is the founder of the Con Oversight Committee. Hi, how are you guys doing?
Good.
I'm doing very well.
Thank you. Okay. Glad to be here. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much for coming. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is you guys do?
Well, initially I was looking at a Facebook post and I realized that somebody had mentioned that the city of Nanaimo was looking to adopt a bylaw to borrow $50 million or $48 million, I think, Sandy, to build a new public works yard in Nanaimo here. And I just thought, oh my God, that's so much money. And then I actually phoned Sandy and I spoke to him about it. And I said, have you ever heard of an alternative approval process? And he said, no. This is a man who's been in business for how many years in Nanaimo here. He had no idea about it, as I didn't either. And so we investigated and found out about the AAP. And I think Sandy will probably be best to describe to you what it is and how it works. But then I found out that this was actually the first phase of a four-phased, what do I call it, Sandy? Project, I guess, sure. And loan. And that the city, although they couldn't say exactly how much money they would end up borrowing, it would be in the neighborhood of $163 million to build the new public works yard. And so, within a very short period of time, friends started helping me develop kind of a social awareness of what was going on. One of my dear friends, she created a Facebook page for us, and then we started becoming engaged with the public. At that time, we only had 10 days until the first AAP on this particular project was going to end. So we didn't have a lot of time, but we really engaged a lot of people. And I think the biggest awareness at that time was that nobody knew. Nobody knew what an AAP was. Nobody knew that one was being conducted. And yet the interesting thing is that nobody knew it was happening, yet everybody was deemed to have said yes to the bylaw, the loan bylaw. So that's how an AAP works. It works like a negative billing scheme where all voters are deemed to have said yes unless they fill out and submit an opposition form. So I had gone to the home show at Bevan Park, and I talked to, at least a couple hundred people in the first day. And of that, there was only maybe 6 or 8 people that knew of it. Of the 6 or 8 people, it's because they either worked for the city of Nanaimo or were related to somebody that worked for the city of Nanaimo. Out of all of them, there was one person who knew what an AAP was and was not related to the city of Nanaimo. So that really gave me a pause. And fortunately, Sandy, and I think I'll let Sandy take it from here, how he was able to stop that first AAP. But that's generally, we formed a society. We now have on our Facebook about 1,700 people that are engaged with us and lots of volunteers to help us put the city in a position where they either give proper notice so that the public knows that this AAP is being conducted and can make a fair determination of whether or not they want to oppose it, or, I don't even know what the alternative is. It's not a good situation as it stands. Anyway, I'll let my hubby take it away.
Well, thanks for having me. The process is a process designed for municipalities to be able to borrow money. Some projects that they get into are very expensive, and hiking your taxes on a short-term basis is probably less agreeable to the community than it is to extend a payment over time. And that's kind of why this AAP process was developed in the first place, to assist municipalities in financing big projects. The municipalities can't deficit finance, so like a provincial government can. So a provincial government can go into debt quite easily and repay the debt through increasing taxes. Municipalities can't do that. They actually have to borrow the money. And the only way they can borrow money is with the consent of the people that it's borrowing the money for, which is the electorate. Anybody who's in the city, for us, it's the city of Nanaimo. So if the electorate is notified by the city that they're going to borrow some money, they can use the AAP process as a negative billing scheme in order to pass a bylaw to borrow the funds. The other way that the city can get approval to borrow the money is through a referendum process, which is probably more well known by most people. So referendum is a process much like an election process. The majority carries the day. So if the bylaw is presented to the people, everybody goes to the poll, votes, and if the majority says no, the bylaw falls. If the majority says yes, the bylaw goes ahead, and they borrow the funds. The AAP process is kind of a throwback from a time in the 60s when it was first being used to get the funds without the necessity of going through an election type process. It probably worked. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't around then, but it probably worked effectively because everyone was reading newspapers at the time. That's where everybody got their news in the 60s, either on a cable television or a newspaper. And publishing things in the newspaper were usually noticed by people back in those days. Now newspapers aren't really utilized that much anymore. It's multimedia, social media, all kinds of different ways of getting information. And newspapers are probably the last place people look now for any kind of information they're looking for. Mm-hmm. But that's the primary way that they give notice, is through newspapers. So that hasn't changed. That's why the system is cumbersome and archaic. It's not using a common sense approach to trying to notify all of the citizens that need to be notified in order to give their approval. If you're going to ask someone for their approval, you have to tell them what you're doing. And if they don't know what you're doing, how is it that you can get their approval? So this type of deemed approval is not the type of democratic process that we expect in our city or in our country. We like to know, at least I do, and all the other people that I've been talking to, they like to know if you're going to be borrowing money, what it's for. They want to know in advance so they have an opportunity to be able to make a decision as to whether they support the loan or not. And there might be various reasons that they support the loan and various reasons why they don't. But if they don't know about it, they'd have no opinion and they're never asked an opinion. So I discovered this process through my wife advising me about the process. I never knew a thing about it. I've been practicing law in Nanaimo and throughout the province for about 38 years. And I'd never heard the acronym AAP before. I'd never heard that. So this is the first time I've heard about it. The process is located in a couple of different acts. They're provincial government acts. One of them is a community charter. The other one is the Local Government Act. And the province passes down some powers to the municipality, and they expect, if they're going to utilize these powers to borrow money, they expect them to follow the terms of the act. And if they don't follow the terms of the act, they can't borrow the money. The first AAP process that I got involved with, that Noni was talking about, I noticed in the legislation that the city hadn't followed some of the detailed descriptions in the community charter to give proper service. They hadn't utilized a first notice process. And through a series of letters and some submissions and a binder of material, I managed to convince the city, as an elector, I did this all as a citizen, I managed to convince the city, the staff and the council and the mayor that what they had done was they did not follow the process that's set out in the community charter. So they agreed that I was right, and they avoided the process that they had gone through, and they collapsed the borrowing bylaw that they had passed.
I think the beauty of that happening was that we were able to get some time to approach the city to tell them that our real big problem was that they weren't giving proper notice to citizens who we felt had the right to know when these AAPs were going to be passed. And also, I think at that time we realized that the Public Works Yard, which turned out to be the Nanaimo Operations Center, so they had given them it a new name, was comprised of more than just a place for them to maintain public service vehicles. They were engaged in building a much bigger project, part of which I think had to do with giving accommodation to like 170 city staff that they wanted to move into that building. And also they were developing surveillance and data collection area, I guess, of that building too, so that they could keep tabs on the driving behavior of the citizens of Nanaimo. Those things were what we found out were wants, in our opinion, wants and not needs. And AAPs were originally devised by the provincial government mostly to deal with needs than wants. Wants should be run through a referendum, such as a few years back when they ran a referendum to decide whether or not the citizens wanted a new arena, and there was a huge response to that, and it was a definite no. They did not want to pay for that, such a building or a new thing. So this really, I think, altered the way we looked at the original borrowing bylaw, what is being spent on what they are selling to the citizens and what is being spent on extras. So I think we were really happy when that first one failed, because now we could put pressure on the city to, divide what was a want from what was a need. So.
Yeah, well, because whether or not you support a project is a personal decision, and you may well believe that you need a new public works building in order to support the vehicles that the fleet of vehicles that the city has, the emergency vehicles and those kinds of things, garbage trucks for services that we all use. So that may well be a good thing for the city of Nanaimo, and you may want to support it, but you may not want to have them borrow that amount of money for that type of building. So you might want to have an opportunity to be able to look at the project and decide for yourself, is this the kind of building that I want to support? Is this the kind of project that I want built? And if it is, do I want them borrowing the money, and which we will have to repay over a number of years with interest? So it's like, approving a credit card in your name without even knowing that you're getting one. Mm-hmm. So after the first AAP process, the city decided that they were going to do it again. Same kind of bylaw, same borrowing bylaw, same project, no differences. They were just going to run it again because they wanted to get it right this time, because I had put a bit of a spoke in their wheel in order to get the bylaw to be a valid bylaw. So they started a new process in January, I think, of 2024. And there are people out trudging around in the rain and the cold and I'm not sure if Snow was around.
The society, we were out there
But-
trying to educate people and
Yeah.
tell them what was going, knocking on doors. Did you know about this AAP? What's an AAP? They had no idea. So we were collecting opposition forms from those who opposed, and there was, there were people who were not in opposition of the project, but they clearly saw that because they didn't know about it, that was not right. And so they signed the opposition forms, not opposing the project, but opposing the means by which the city was doing this. And that's by not giving proper and effective notice.
Yeah. So that second AAP process failed again because of some problems with service and notifying people. It just failed. So they scrapped that idea. Now they're coming on a third time now, and to September 18th. They're starting a third AAP process for the Public Works building, but they're calling it the phrase that they're using now to advertise the project is one and done. And what they mean by that, I think, is that rather than having a 4-phase project that you really don't know how much you're spending in 4 phases, they'll just build the 2 major buildings, and it'll cost just about $90 million for these 2 buildings. Built into the $90 million, I understand there's about a 25% contingency fee. So the budget's really not $90 million; it's something much less. But they have 25% built in just in case there's problems. I'm not sure what problems they're anticipating, but that's the amount they want to borrow in this AAP. So they're choosing to, as I understand it, they're choosing to advertise much in the same way they advertised the last 2 AAPs, which, again, I can tell you didn't reach very many people. The Con Oversight Society's been out there pounding the pavement on 2 previous occasions for AAPs. And all the people they talked to, nobody's ever heard of it. So it's a very poor way for the city to try and notify its own citizens that it's going to borrow money on their behalf. The kind of feedback they've been getting is pretty substantial. There's a website, Noni said her website has 1,700 members. They had well over 3,000 response forms that were filed in the first AAP. I think they had about 3,000. And in the second AAP, they had 3,000. The first AAP, they only got about 10 or 12 days in to gather all these opposition forms.
Out of the 30 days that they were given, but we found out about it almost at the end of it. The second one was about the same amount of days, but Sandy gave them the legal dynamic that ended that AAP about 17 days short, I think, of the end of that one. So people were really starting to pick up on the problem, and I think we had a very good result in a very short amount of time.
So they've had a significant response from the people that know about it. There's not very many people that they approach, I understand, that don't sign the opposition form. There's very few that don't. Anybody they approach, once they understand what it is that's going on, they generally sign the form.
In my recollection, the people that didn't and weren't interested in it were related in some way to the city of Nanaimo. Yeah.
How many opposition forms are you supposed to get?
Good question.
Yeah. So the last AAP, they're going to tell us. It's kind of funny because they don't tell you until they actually file the notice in the newspaper. You don't know how many you're going to need. But the last 2, there's been pretty close to 8,000 forms that you require in order to successfully oppose the bylaw.
That represents 10% of the voting electorate. They have to achieve 10%.
So whereas, and this is the big difference between that process and a referendum process. In a referendum process, if only 8,000 people vote, all you need is 4,001 to oppose, or 4,001 to pass it. You don't need 10% of the population to send in forms. You just go to the poll, check your yes or your no on the referendum, and it either passes or doesn't pass. Now, one of the reasons that they've been telling me that referendums are not favorable is because of the cost. Their staff has said that the cost is around $300,000 to run a referendum, and I think the number that Cheryl told us was about 30,000 to run an AAP process. So one of the ways that they try and convince people, even with this archaic process, that it's a good process is because it's costing you less money. The problem with that is that if you don't know what they're doing, in the end, it increases your property taxes and it costs you money in property taxes. And they have a budget for a referendum. So the question that arises in my mind is if I know what the project is and I get a choice, then I'll make my choice. If I never know what the project is and I get no choice, they'll go ahead and borrow the money anyway under the AAP process. It's whether or not they spend $300,000 that they've already received from the citizens of Nanaimo for referendums means nothing to me. They've already taken my money. They have it right in their budget, and all they have to do is hold a referendum and spend the money. They've already taken the money. They have it. So it's not like it's costing us anything more than they've already done or taken. And the city's running pretty much surpluses every year of taxes. They've got a surplus. I think the last surplus was about $8 million. So they have extra money at the end of their fiscal year. They have this extra money, and I don't know really what they do with it, but they could probably hold a couple of referendums so that we could have a proper vote or a democratic vote on whether or not they're borrowing money. The idea that you would have a population have to go down to City Hall, pick up a form. So you have to drive down there. If you're in the north end of Nanaimo, you have to drive all the way down to City Hall. You have to pick up a form. You have to sign it, and then you have to hand it in, and then you got to drive home. So that process costs the taxpayer the time that they have to do that. It costs them the fuel to get back and forth from City Hall to do that, and that I don't think they've factored in 8 or 10,000 people doing that as a cost, as a true cost of the AAP process. So whether it's coming out of my jeans today in order to get my opposition form down there, or coming out of my jeans by way of spending money on a referendum, I'd rather spend the money on a referendum. Then I get a choice, and I get it's a vote, a democratic vote.
I think two people would argue, well, you can print it off of the Nanaimo website, which you can print it off, but you still have to fill it in. You still have to either mail it in, there's a stamp, the cost of a stamp, or you do have to drive it down, deliver it in person. And so, there's a lot of adjustments that need to be made in order to make it convenient for people to express their views on our city borrowing money that we are going to end up paying back. This council and mayor are going to be long gone. They're calling these loans generational loans. They are going to be so vast that our generation will never be able to pay the money back. And I'm talking about long-term loans. My children will never be able to pay that money back. It's going to be, their children maybe get a handle of it if they don't borrow anymore, which is very unlikely because this is just for a few projects. What's going to happen if, 2 years down the road, 5 years or 10 years, when they have to build a new this or a new that, they're going to have to borrow, again. And I think right now they have projects coming down the pike that are going to maximize the amount of money that can be borrowed, the legal maximum that a city can borrow. I think they want to tap into the maximum. So, we're looking at a very dire situation if they do. Property taxes are going to go up huge, like really bad. I guess the citizens aren't going to be too happy about that.
With when you're having a democratic process like an election, um, you can add referendums. So with some skilled planning, and they have a lot of staff at the city. I noticed that their staff is growing. They have a significant amount of people working down at the city of Nanaimo. So I would think that they would be able to coordinate in a real way all of the projects that they need to do over the next 5 or 6 years, because every council has a 4-year lifespan. So they'll if the city staff were proper planning these things, they could have all of their projects ready for the new council coming in on on a referendum during the election process. And it wouldn't cost a nickel for our city because they're already doing the election. They could have the referendums all set out, quite clear as a bell, and they could have yes or no on several different projects that they think that they can accomplish over the next administration or the next council, right? So over that 4-year term, they can build a new police station, which is required in Nanaimo. So a new police station gets built because the people showed up for an election process and they went to the referendum and they signed on the referendum that they want a new police station. Yes, we do. And we'll borrow the money because we need it. We need it now. So the next administration would then be responsible to build the new police station, borrow the money, and pay for it. And they know the cycle. They know every 4 years they have new councils being elected. They know they have to have an election. So why they don't have any referendums set on election day is beyond me. It's a simple matter of proper planning. And so I would, that's one of the suggestions that I have made to the city of Nanaimo, that you need more referendums, less AAPs, and more notice and more education on what this process is and what it does. Without it, it's just a draconian process where nobody gets notified, nobody knows what's going on.
And how they responded to that.
Well, the way they respond to it is that, oh well, we need the projects when we need the projects. We can't wait for these election cycles. But I don't. I quite frankly don't buy that. I think that elections are the perfect opportunity to have projects. They can for 2 years prior to the election, they can advertise the projects. They can make everybody aware of them, and they can have their referendums all set up. And when the election comes along, everybody's at the voting booth anyway, electing their representatives. They got to be there. They can just look scroll down, and they can see, hey, these are our referendums this year. We've got 4 projects on the go. Which one do I want? I want this one. I don't want this one. Don't want that one. Don't want that one. It's really simple process, and you're already politically involved. You're voting for the person that you want to run in the next administration, and those are the people that are going to be building or utilizing the funds to build the new project. That's the new project for that administration. So rather than getting elected and then running these AAPs to finance their projects, because it's the city staff that are coming up with these projects that need to be done. They research them and they propose different ways of having these projects financed and the type of schedules that they could follow in order to build these projects out. So if they would just do some more planning and get them on the election when the elections are being held, like I said, it wouldn't cost another nickel to hold all those referendums.
I was just going to ask you, Kellan, in 2018, 17, were you here in Nanaimo?
I came in 2021.
Oh, okay. Because had you been here then, and this I think is one of the things that really surprised people that I spoke to, the city ran an AAP for a borrowing bylaw to borrow around $17 million to build the new fire hall that's downtown. So at that time, they had ran a few AAPs just for usage change for land or whatever. That's another reason. It's a whole other ball game. But another reason that they can run an AAP. And all of those AAPs, and there was about 10 of them, had two, maybe three. I think one time there was four people, and once or twice there was one person opposed.
4 people who opposed.
Literally, one, two, three, or four. They were all 2 or 3 people. So in the paper, they said that when the fire hall bylaw, borrowing bylaw came, that was an unprecedented response, opposition response of 783 people opposed. So in literally a week that we were educating people on the AAP for this new project, we turned in over 3,000 oppositions. And it doesn't say that nobody, what it says is that nobody knew about it. Because if people had known about the fire hall loan, they may not have opposed it. They may have opposed it. I don't know. But, when you're borrowing those types of monies, the interest on it is just, extraordinary. And people might have said, well, I'd rather just you raise my property taxes for the next 5 years to support that purchase or that project rather than us borrowing the money over 20 years. The interest, hey Sandy, the interest on all of these projects almost comes to half of whatever the loan is. So if we're looking at $90 million to build the new public works yard, at the end of 20 years, you're looking at 100. It'll turn out to be another, $40 million in interest on top of that. And people might, that's just a waste of money. What could we do today as a city with $40 million?
Were you at the town hall meeting recently in Nanaimo?
Yeah, I was there.
So one of the suggestions I made to people at the town hall meeting, and I think is going to be very effective, is come out and talk to your council on Monday nights. They have meetings every Monday night, and the agenda goes on their website. So you can look at their agenda and look at the things they're going to be talking about, and then you can actually apply on their website to be a speaker, and you get a 5-minute time limited kind of speech that you can give to the council and the mayor as to what your position is or what your research has shown or whatever you want to say. The more the public engages with the council and with the staff of the city of Nanaimo, the more effect that we're going to have on some of the things that they do and some of the things that they pass. If we have nobody that comes to these meetings with the city, I think they take that as nobody's really interested. So it's up to people to engage their council and engage their mayor, and let them know that this process that they're using is not a good process. They don't appreciate being involved in a process that's not a democratic process, and they want referendums. That's a good way to have some motivation for the city and the council, because they're politicians, right? So if they know that what the people want is referendums, and they don't want APs anymore, and that's going to be a political issue, then they're going to have to either change the way they do business, or they're not going to be elected again. I think that's a simple process that everybody in Nanaimo can get involved in, and everybody can. And I'm not talking about all of the projects might be valid projects. They might be absolutely necessary, absolutely valid, and everybody might support them, right? We just want the opportunity to be able to support them or not support them. And so far, that's not through an AAP. That's not the process.
It's the notice. The notice has really failed the citizens of Nanaimo.
How many people are they reaching with their notices?
Well, I'll tell you what. So the town hall meeting was an excellent example. Sandy asked the 150, 175 people there, who has heard of an AAP And then Sandy said, I see 4 or 5 people holding their hand up. Now they've ran to AAPs. They promoted the heck out of them. They, they by holding little um, venues at the public works yards to show people how necessary it was. They did put some ads in the paper, but it shows you that people aren't engaged in the paper and they're not engaged on their website. So very, I don't know how many people went, 100 people, they might have gotten 100 people. So of that at this city town hall with only 4 or 5 people, that's like 4%. And so we said that's consistent with our experience in the first AAP when we were out knocking on doors. I mean, it wasn't even that. So how can they get 10% opposition if only 1% no or 2% of the voting population no? They can't possibly, it's impossible, which makes you go, why are you still running, City of Nanaimo, Mayor, why are you still running these AAPs when you know that only 2 or 3% of the population might get notice? Seems
Well,
very undemocratic.
well, that yeah, I agree. And if anybody has an obligation to serve notice on its citizens, it's the municipal council, right? Right. If they're the ones that want to borrow the money, and they want to engage the process, it's their obligation to notify the citizens. They they have taken the approach that all they have to do is do the absolute flat out minimum that's required in the legislation, and that's it. That's all they have to do. And then they can rely on their deemed approval, right? So they know, or they should know, that they're not reaching the people. They're not reaching the citizens. So having that, you know, that disingenuous notice go out that they know is not going to reach people, and then having the nerve to say, oh, because nobody brought in opposition forms, we're going to borrow the money because everybody's approved.
Yeah, it was so shocking to see the headline after the first uh, uh, where was it that, oh, I think actually this was in the Victoria one, but nobody knew about it. And then they say overwhelming approval for, actually, was it in Nanaimo? Where was
I
that?
can't remember. I can't remember. But but Noni's mentioned the
Yeah.
Victoria experience. So I'm legal counsel for a group in Victoria. They're called the Grumpy Taxpayers, and they retained me for the purposes of trying to overturn a bylaw, borrowing bylaw, in the Capital Regional District in Victoria. And
They had adopted.
yeah, so before they adopted the bylaw, I sent them a letter and some binders, much in the same way I sent them to Nanaimo. I sent them to the Capital Regional District. So they had done much the same thing that the city of Nanaimo had done for service. So I sent the same kind of materials to them, and they just simply disagreed and ignored my information and the legal opinions we sent them, and passed the borrowing bylaw. So they retained me to challenge that bylaw by saying, "Hey, you didn't follow the legislation properly, and therefore your bylaw is void." And that matter's set to be heard. It was set to be heard on the 3rd of
Tomorrow.
this month, tomorrow, and but it's on an assize system, so I don't know if it's going to go tomorrow or not. I don't think it is. So it may well get adjourned off into maybe a month or two down the road. But it is going to be kind of a definitive answer to this process that they're using to try and notify people, and whether or not they're doing it properly. So that once that's done, and once the Supreme Court has ruled on that, then the municipalities will have to follow whatever the Supreme Court has has sanctioned as the proper way to do things.
Yeah, we've suggested strongly that they send notice out to each and every property in Nanaimo so that the electors that live on that property have an opportunity to read about the project and get all the information they need and the information on how to oppose if they want to oppose. And the city has disagreed with that.
Well, they've I think they've decided to send flyers. Um, so you get the
Coupon package.
yeah, the kind of the junk mail stuff that you get with your newspaper, or in the mailbox, you get a bunch of coupons and those kinds of things. There'll be a flyer from the city of Nanaimo with information about the AAP on it. That I think that's one of the things
They've
that they're
proposed that.
yeah
I'm not sure if it's 100%, but they
yeah
have proposed, which is better than nothing.
yeah
But it isn't. They're still taking a chance that people aren't going to open up the coupon package or open up the coupon and look at it. I think in a situation like this, it needs to be taken seriously. It needs to be an official notice, and it needs to be delivered to everybody that's going to be paying for it. So,
one of the things that one of the things that I've said several times to the city is, look, everybody knows when an election is on.
mhm.
Everybody knows when the mayor and the councilors want to get elected again because they're all over the place. They're talking to people.
Signs.
There's signs everywhere.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that voting day is on a certain day. People take time off work to go to voting days. So everyone knows. It's like the provincial election. Everybody knows when it is.
Mhm.
It's not like you have to get a notice in a newspaper to tell you when it is. Everybody gets it. It's all over the internet. It's everywhere. So during an election process is the absolute perfect time for the municipality to introduce a referendum for all of the projects that they're going to do over the next 4 years. They could do it every cycle, and it doesn't cost them anything. It doesn't cost the citizens anything. It doesn't cost the city anything because they've already got the election process set up. All the scrutineers are there, and the referendum process can go ahead. And that's a fair and democratic way. If we elect our people that way, why can't we borrow money that way?
Exactly. And Kellan, something else that we have found out is that this new public yards, or what is it called?
Public works.
Public works yard. The public works yard, this is not a new idea. This just didn't come about. We understand that the city has known for how many years?
At least 20 years.
At least 20 years that they're going to have to rebuild it. They have not taken any steps over that period of time to prepare for this. So now if they do get to borrow the money, the $90 million, we are going to have to pay the interest on that. Had they been prepared for this, it would have been a one and done right now. And we'd have had the money, and the people of Nanaimo wouldn't have their taxes raised. It would have been, they would have had this money, planned for over a period of time. So those are the things that we're really, shocked at, disappointed in the city and mayor for, and staff that they didn't prepare for these big projects that are coming up.
Yeah, that is right.
Mm-hmm.
And had they had them listed in their referendums over the last 5 election cycles, they would have had the money to build these things out. They would have done it, and it would have been an obligation of each administration as they get elected. These are the projects you have to build out. These are the projects that are necessary that have to be built out, and people will vote on those things, and they'll vote whether or not they want them or not. It's a very democratic way of resolving what is a very undemocratic process they're using right now.
So why was it that the hockey arena went to a referendum?
Well, I think the primary reason is because a hockey arena isn't really required in a community in order for a community to survive. Um, the difference is so the public works yard building is a building that allows for all the fleet of the city's vehicles can get washed down, worked on, repaired, um, and so that they're always serviced and serviceable during the times that they need them. So
It's a need.
It's a necessity.
It's a necessity.
The mayor gave the example of what happens in an earthquake and we got 9 vehicles that aren't working because we don't have a good public works building. Then you're not going to get those emergency vehicles when you need them. That was kind of the mayor's example, and
I was just going to say, but one of the differences between that and this last one was apparently the city really, really advertised the AAP. People were really aware, and I'm not sure what they did differently. Maybe more radio, more signage. It became a big controversy. So they had record numbers of people coming out to vote in this referendum.
And the mayor's also said on at least one occasion, but I think more than one, that AAPs are generally not for wants. They're for needs only. And so that would exclude things like ice arenas or recreational centers, clubs or those kinds of things that might be nice to have, but aren't needed. Police stations, new police stations, higher tech kind of equipment that the police need in order to complete their policing services. That's, in my view, that's a need. Yeah, so that's something that might be suitable for an AAP if they could figure out how to serve everybody or how to give them notice. But certainly they're planning a South End community center now. That is more of a want for the South End communities. And whether or not that particular community center gets built should be up to the people. And that should be in a referendum as to whether or not they want to borrow that kind of money. I don't even know how much it is, but it's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And the people should be able to decide, do we want another recreation center in Nanaimo to service the South End? And if so, how are we going to pay for it? Do we want to borrow the money? And that should be done. And I think they plan to do it by way of referendum.
I think it's important to say that, especially in this town hall, the town hall was an excellent thing for the people to put on because we learned a lot at that town hall. But what I wanted to say was, what was I going to say? Hold on a second. A really good point.
Because this is a provincial issue. Because there's municipality. Nanaimo's not the only municipality that uses AAPs.
Well, I know what it was. Sorry.
There are other municipalities that use it. There's one in I think it's Abbotsford. The mayor in Abbotsford said that he would never use the AAP process ever again. Yeah. It was a disaster for them. So, but the other there's an AAP process running there right now in Kamloops. There's another one in Lanceville, I think, or Nanaimo Bay. There was one last year that was running in Kelowna. There's one in Victoria that I'm dealing with right now. Ladysmith had one that failed. So it seems to be the kind of thing that the municipalities are using a lot now. There's a lot more activity in the AAP business. And it might be because it's pretty easy to borrow money if you're using the AAP because nobody seems to know about it. There's very few people that know about the process itself and know that if they want to participate in it, they have to oppose it.
I know what I was going to say. So Cheryl Armstrong, one of the most engaged council members, in my opinion, she is actually joined our Facebook group, the Con Oversight Facebook group, and she often answers questions for a lot of the people on there, and I'm really, really grateful to her for her participation. But one of the questions she asked Sandy at the town hall was, okay, we're going to run this AAP, you know, if it fails, if we have to cancel it, then we're going to run a referendum. Well, what if the citizens come and they vote against it? Then what do we do, say, for the police station, which is mandated by the government to build? And Sandy said to her, well, that's the people saying, we agree that you can raise our property taxes over the next 5 years. the amount of money that we need to raise. What we're not agreeing to is you raising our property taxes over the next 20 or 30 years and building all that interest on top. Let's get it paid for right away. Because the city has the right to build the police station. They're mandated by the government. They have to do it. So, but let the people decide. Do we want to pay now or do we want to pay later and much more later? And Cheryl agreed. Oh yeah, well, of course. So I think it's really important that the council and mayor remember that the people are in charge. They need to be the ones to decide how and when their money is going to be spent, and let them decide. They're smart. There are no decisions that are too big for the people to make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree. One of the other issues that pops up from time to time when we're dealing with the AAP process is there's been some kind of backlash from some of the people on council by saying certain things like, well, if we have to raise their taxes in order to build something, then that's on you people, because you people seem to be wanting that, and if we respond to you, then it's your fault that these things are going to get built and it's going to be increased in taxes, and so my automatic response was, well, you've had over 20 years or even longer to build some of these projects out. You're telling me that your failure as politicians over 20 years, 5 different administrations, your failure to build that thing over that time, despite the fact that you've increased your staff dramatically over that 20 years, is our fault somehow? That the building is falling down is our fault? You people are the people that are in charge. You should have come to us and asked us a long time ago for permission to borrow money, or asked us to increase our taxes so that we could give a proper building to make sure that our fleet of vehicles, emergency vehicles, are well kept. So that's a political and a municipal government problem. Not it's got nothing to do with me or anyone else that wants to be engaged with the city. It's completely due to ineffective staff and ineffective councils not getting the job done. And they can give excuses all day long for whatever reasons they've got. But the fact is, they've had a building at the Public Works Yard that's needed to be repaired and replaced for over 20 years. And nothing has been done other than these 2 failed AAPs to borrow a bunch of money to build it now, and now a 3rd AAP. So they've spent 30, 60. Now this one's going to cost, that's $90,000 that they'll have spent.
Plus they've hired consultants.
So I don't even know how much money they've spent. But if they had just held a referendum, mm-hmm. and when they went to get elected, they knew all about this when they were holding elections in 2022. They knew all about the building. They knew for 20 years they've known about this building. They could have had an easy matter put on a referendum during the election process. Wouldn't have cost them a dime. And they would have had their answer.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was it they failed to do the first 2 times, and what are they doing differently this time?
Well, there's certain requirements under the community charter on publications and how you publish and when you publish, and there's certain timelines that you have to follow. And in my opinion, they failed to follow those published timelines.
On both occasions.
On both occasions.
Different little sections of the charter, but both had problems.
Yeah. So, and they agreed with me, with my opinion. They did agree, and they voluntarily voided their bylaw and voluntarily voided the process on the second one. This third one, are they doing anything differently?
We don't know.
Remains to be seen.
Yes.
I don't think so. I think they're going to go ahead and just do it again the same way they did it before.
Yeah.
They're allowing some more time, though. this time. There appears to be more
Few
time
days.
to return opposition forms, because the bare minimum in returning these opposition forms for all of these 8,000 people to return their forms is the bare minimum is 30 clear days. So it really matters when you hold these AAPs. If you're going to use this process, it really matters when you hold them, because if you hold them over the summer, or if you hold them over the holiday, or if you hold them in the early spring when it's cold and nasty weather, it makes it difficult for people to get out and deal with having to add one more thing to their list to do if they ever find out about it, because the other people that are trying to canvass their neighborhoods aren't out as often because it's bad weather or nobody's home, or those kinds of things. So it's a timing issue to make sure you get the optimum type of people, the optimum time that people are going to be home, they're going to be available, and they're going to be able to handle something like this.
I think the best business practices suggest that you don't hold elections or EAPs anyway in the holiday time
Yeah,
when people are going to be away.
yeah.
So
Because they don't know about it, and the funny thing is they don't know about it anyway, even
yeah,
if they are home. So it's kind of
moot.
ironic.
So, what's your opinion on this particular project? Do you think that they're trying to wrap in something that's really not necessary into it?
The Con Oversight Society has some really smart, dedicated people that have been looking at the project that they're proposing now, and I think pretty much the consensus is that the public works yard building is still kind of the same kind of building that they were going to build before, and their opinion is that it's kind of overbuilt, that they could probably be built for much less, but they're not engineers. They, and the city's position has always been there's no jewelry. That's their use of their term. There's no jewelry on these buildings. Um, so that's the public works building itself, which, quite frankly, I think is needed. I think that public works building is needed.
In my opinion, though, one nail over and above what is considered a public works building, I think is unnecessary and a want. And I'm going to suggest right now that the part of the building that's going to house and accommodate the
Well,
centralizing the staff, I think is a want. It might be nice to do,
Yeah,
but it's a want.
that's a separate building.
Yeah.
It's an administrative building that they're proposing to build in conjunction with the public works yard building. It's going to be on the same site, and that building is they say they want to take all of their staff and where they already have them in buildings, right? So these staff are already working in buildings and carrying on their business for the city. What they want to do is they want to relocate them into a new building. So if they don't need to relocate them into a new building, I don't know how they can express this as a need. It's got to be a want. And it's the staff that want this, because the mayor and council, they won't be out there. They'll be in the usual chambers that they're in, um,
In the city hall.
in the city hall. So this must be a staff want, right? They want all their staff located in one spot, and maybe they want some new kind of high tech things in their building. They might have.
And green initiatives have been played a big part in this too. I'm not sure if you're familiar, Kellan, with green initiatives, but they are.
Like the UN sustainable
That's
goals?
correct. So, you know, the criteria for the build alone, the amount of money that they have to spend by complying with the green initiatives really raises the amount of money that they're needing to spend to build this building. So that's something else that I think citizens really need to know about and agree with if they're willing, if that's important enough for them to do that. If it is, then borrow that money. But if it isn't, they need to cut that out.
At a time in our history where everyone else is tightening their belts, high inflation rates, high interest rates, um, increased costs of just about everything, insurance, gasoline,
Food.
food. nothing has been untouched by the significant increase in costs, which has reduced everybody's paychecks, and a lot of people are living on credit, and it's necessarily so. Um, in that atmosphere, they're proposing to build an administrative building to house a bunch of city employees. That's unconscionable, absolutely unconscionable, and they're going to borrow the money to do it at an interest rate that is probably too high, and we're going to end up repaying it over a period of time. It's like
A
having a
long
credit.
period of
It's like having
time.
a credit card and just saying, "Well, I don't have the money right now, and the interest rates are high, and you can't really afford to do anything. But I'm going to build a
Let's do it.
building. Let's just go build a building." It doesn't make any fiscal sense to me at all. None.
And it's not their credit card. It's our credit card.
Yeah, it's our credit. That's true. Yeah, it's our credit.
90 million seems like a lot of money.
Yeah.
It does. It's a lot of money. 163 million was even more money, but 90 million is still too much, in my opinion. When I know, when I think I know what they're building, I'd like to see them build a new public work. I wouldn't support that during this AAP because it's not about the build. For me, it's about proper notice to all of the affected voters. If everybody gets the notice, everybody gets to say whether or not they oppose, then second step, Noni decides whether or not she wants to see that building built. I would absolutely approve a new public works yard, maintenance building, and that's it. Spend as little as we need to. And in fact, I myself, Sandy and I, we wouldn't be opposed to them instead of borrowing the money, just raising our taxes for the next 5 years for that special project. And then after that, lower our taxes or give us something else to consider. I
So,
would support that. I
so
don't
how,
want to be paying all that. I don't want generational loans for my kids and my grandchildren to have to pay back.
so how do we change it, right? How do we get away from this AAP business and get back into democratic processes? Because it's a provincial government responsibility and a provincial government act, it's going to have to take some pressure on the provincial government to change their community charter and local government act to relieve the municipalities of the opportunity of using the AAP process. If they're not going to provide actual notice to their citizens, I think it's incumbent upon every one of us in the province to deal with your MLAs and say, look, this you can't support this anymore. This is stupid. What's going on now? It doesn't work. I don't even know how much they're borrowing. They don't even notify me. I don't know. And it's not me. It's the entire city, right? So in order to do that, you have to try and educate people and let them know what the problems are associated with this process. I've found that the town hall process has been a very effective tool to have people engage with people like me and like Jeff, who gave a wonderful presentation. You saw the one with the graph and showed you how the 600 million is going to be borrowed in the city of Nanaimo over a
Well,
period of
that's the
30 years.
proposed plan. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was a very effective way of making people understand these are the things that are going on around you with your city that they're not yet actually notifying you about, but they can actually borrow the money because they don't really need to notify you.
Mm.
So it the town hall process is a provincially run process. So it's province wide. There's town halls all over the place, and I think it's a great tool. Everybody should sponsor them. Everyone should go to them. Everybody should participate, engage with the people that are speaking there. It's a wonderful way of making sure that the provincial government knows that hey, we're out here, we're voters, and we don't like what's going on with this particular type of process.
Mhm.
Yeah, the city. We've been pretty vocal and pretty aggressive in trying to deal with the city on this issue, and they keep saying go to the province. This is a provincial government issue, even though that's a bit disingenuous, because even though the city can give you much more time to return response forms, those are
It's
bare
arbitrary.
minimums.
Yeah.
So they could give you 3 months to return response forms and let you actually go and talk to everybody in the city over 3 months. But they don't want to do that for whatever their reasons are. I have no idea. They've waited for since January to start a new AAP in September. So why won't they give you 90 days to return response forms? It makes no sense to me. The potential change of guard here with the changing government might be a perfect opportunity for some lobbying from municipalities, from people who've been affected by these AAPs, and there are a lot of people involved, to lobby their MLAs to get them to do something, or at least have an open discussion about the process and how it's being used in each municipality and why it isn't working.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
That's great. Thank you very much for coming on
Okay.
and speaking with me and speaking with everybody.
Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time.
I just have one more thing.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to plug again the Con Oversight?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that you can join our Facebook group, Con Oversight Society, and also we have a website, Con Oversight Society. Oh, what is it? Conoversight.ca. Con, C-O-N, oversight.ca. And we'll see you on that page.
Thank you very much, everybody.